This episode is brought to you by CoolStuffInc.com, the #1 seller of games and gaming accessories. And GatheringMagic.com, the #1 resource for Magic the Gathering news and articles.
Alright, so I'm back with another video this week, and what I want to discuss this week is how to play sweepers and how they function within the context of a game. Sweepers are a very critical part of Magic play, and understanding how to play against sweepers and how to utilize sweepers is a big part of becoming a better player. The key thing to remember with sweepers is that they are part of at least from a control standpoint, they're part of a strategy designed to force attrition. When you play against sweepers, the key thing to note is that you have to reduce the amount of attrition that the sweeper generates. You need to mitigate the effect that the sweeper has in terms of both cards. In some cases, the time aspect of a sweeper is more important. But in general, the critical thing with sweepers is to mitigate the number of cards the sweeper takes. So the way you do this is by presenting efficient threats from a card standpoint. If you can force sweepers to be 1-for-1, that tends to be very good for you. And if you can, in general, get benefits off of your creatures that in some other area, then you've also mitigated the effectiveness of the sweeper. So I think this game is a good demonstration of, in general, how sweepers operate. I'm playing the Esper list that I was playing last week with some slight modifications. The list is below. And what is going to happen is I'm going to show you how this game turns out. I lose this game due to time reasons, but I think that in the end of the game my position is good, and the only reason I'm in that position is because I was able to effectively use my sweepers to mitigate his attack. My opponent is playing a Naya aggro deck that is almost certainly podless, because we played a long game 1 and 2 and I didn't see a pod in either game. So keep that in mind as we go through this game. He's playing stuff like Blades Blaster, Huntmaster, the Fells, Restoration Angel, Strangleroot Geist, things of that nature. I haven't seen Zealous Conscripts, but I wouldn't be surprised to see it out of him. So as expected, nothing much happens on my first 2 turns. He casts Thalia on turn 2. I should think twice in response here. Because of time control reasons, I hit F2 too quickly. So, yeah. So this is just really a mistake. Luckily I draw land anyway, and am able to Phantasmal Image his Thalia. So you'll find out in this game that I'm being pretty good at Magic the Gathering and just ripping lands at will. He Green Suns for Strangleroot Geist, and I rip another land so that I can cast Forbidden Alchemy here safely, instead of having to think twice main phase or Alchemy main phase for a land. He metamorphs his Strangleroot Geist, and I play Forbidden Alchemy. This is the first real decision point, and I think that this Forbidden Alchemy demonstrates the principle of utilizing sweepers to cause attrition very, very well. If you notice, the 2 creatures he has in play are Strangleroot Geists. This means that my sweepers in general, my Day of Judgment in general, is not going to be very effective, and I'm going to be relying on this Terminus more heavily if I leave both Geists in play. This means that if I Day of Judgment, I've effectively traded 1 Day of Judgment for half a Strangleroot Geist plus half a Strangleroot Geist, and I'm still left with 6 points of pressure on the board. That's really not a very good position to be in, so I need to find some way of dealing with these Strangleroot Geists before my sweepers can come down and do their thing. Thus, while taking the land and getting myself to towards Terminus is not necessarily a bad choice, the more reliable option here is going to be to take the Oblivion Ring, which is what I'm going to take. So as sad as it is to bin 2 lands, that's what happens. Luckily I ripped the land, so I'm able to cast this thing twice and this Oblivion Ring. I take the Metamorph because the Strangleroot Geist is a little bit more predictable in what it's going to copy. In retrospect, it's actually probably a little bit better for me to take the Geist. Although if he has a third Strangleroot Geist, the Metamorph becomes problematic when I go to sweep. Although if he has a third Strangleroot Geist, who knows what's going to happen with that anyway. The key here with the taking of the Strangleroot Geist is that I'm setting up Deadweight plus Day of Judgment to sweep his table. So I take 2 more off of the Geist, and he Borderland Rangers for a 5th land. I finally managed to cast this thing twice. And now I have another thing to look at. Playing this Gideon here allows me to continue to force him to commit to the table, because 4 damage against the Gideon Jura is actually quite slow, and I can deadweight to take care of the Borderland Ranger, and that means that I can force him to commit another creature to the table. So the awkward thing here is, for him, is going to be that with a Gideon in play, he's going to be forced to put more threats on the table in order to deal with the Gideon Jura, and thus making my Day of Judgment and Terminus more powerful. And so thus, playing the Gideon Jura here is the right line. Once again, we're taking an attrition-focused line. I'm trying to get him to commit as much to the table as possible without killing him. Without killing his dudes. Thus, when the sweeper comes, it will take the most possible creatures. When dealing with an opponent who's playing this sort of line, the key is to commit enough resources to deal with whatever threats he's presenting, while maintaining your ability to not lose too much to a sweeper. Note that he's up 5 cards to 3, which is actually a really good place for him to be right now, because it means that I have to be super efficient with my sweepers to even survive. Here he has Acidic Slime, and he manages to take out both my Ghost Quarter and my Oblivion Ring with this Acidic Slime Metamorph play. Now, so obviously in this situation with my Gideon at 4 counters, it's not going to be able to survive another attack, and he's got far more than enough power on the board right now for me to sweep it away. So, sweep it away it is. Now, the reason I run Gideon to 6 instead of attacking is that right now my position is still a relatively defensive one, so having Gideon at a higher loyalty is going to serve me well. His follow-up play is Huntmaster of the Fells, which is actually really strong in this position because it puts 4 power on the table to try to punch through this Gideon Jura without putting more than 1 card on the table. At this point in time, I have to play a spell to deal with the Huntmaster, to prevent it from flipping. I can either flashback Think Twice, or play Oblivion Ring. The Oblivion Ring is actually, I think, a slightly stronger line here, because I continue to be able to use my Gideon to force him to overcommit to the board. The Terminus right now is only going to be a 1-for-1, so if he plays another card onto the table, and after I play my Oblivion Ring on his Huntmaster, I'm still effectively getting a 1-for-2. A 2-for-2. So I'm not really losing that much efficiency on the Oblivion Ring. The question is, can I get more out of my Terminus? And I think playing the Oblivion Ring is slightly better here. I choose to go with playing the Think Twice because I really just want to see more cards. And it ends up not being terrible. What happens here is the reason the Oblivion Ring is better here is because he can just Township and kill my Gideon, which I missed when playing this game. I didn't really have a way of dealing with the Township, so I sort of like mentally set it aside, and I forgot to do the math. Now, luckily, he doesn't use the Township play, which I think would have been better. He holds up mana here, which clearly means he has Restoration Angel. There's very little reason for him not to Township, unless he has the Angel here, so I'm putting him on the Angel. Huntmaster transforms, deals Gideon an additional 2. And I draw Wormcoil Engine. Now, the key thing here is that my Gideon's going to die next turn anyway because he has a Restoration Angel. This means that with Blinking Huntmaster, there's absolutely no way I can stop the Gideon from going down, so the Gideon's already dead. Now, once again, we come back to this idea of how to maximize the efficiency of my sweepers. I'm continuing to want to get him to overcommit to the table, and what I can do here is I can O-ring the Ravager of the Fells, in which case he'll Restoration Angel in response, and that'll be really bad for me, or I can just play this Wormcoil Engine. By forcing him to attack next turn, I gain 6 life off of my Wormcoil Engine, and that allows me to force him to commit more to the board, because not only does he have to deal with the fact that it's a 6/6, he also has to overwhelm the lifelink, and so therefore hopefully the Wormcoil will force him to commit more than 1 card to the table. Thus, when I Terminus, I'm trading 2 cards for 3 or 4 instead of 2 cards for 2, like I would be with the Oblivion Ring at this juncture. So the Wormcoil Engine comes down. At this point in time, I don't really want to Ghost Quarter the Township, even though I can, because I have this Forbidden Alchemy in my graveyard that I would like to flashback first. So ideally, I would like to spend 7 mana on that before Ghost Quartering his Township. With the Terminus coming very, very soon, that's not necessarily a unfeasible option. It is reasonable that he won't be able to utilize his Township that effectively between the Terminus and what's going on soon. So I will likely get my Alchemy. So as expected, Restoration Angel comes down, and Gideon gets his ass killed. I block the Huntmaster, obviously, to gain some extra life. And so here, this is my opportunity to flashback the Forbidden Alchemy. As you can see, since I drew my 8th land, I simply Ghost Quarter his Gavany Township to get that out of the way now. Attack, and O-ring his Angel. I O-ring his Angel here because effectively what this O-ring is doing is much the same thing as the Gideon last turn. But since I'm already on 7 lands, I can go ahead and safely Ghost Quarter his thing because I already have the mana for Forbidden Alchemy. The Restoration Angel, taking the Restoration Angel here, forces him to commit more creatures to the table to deal with my Wormcoil Engine. So note that I'm still effectively on 1-for-1 with my Terminus, and hopefully I'll be able to increase the efficiency of that. Sadly, that's not going to be the case because he has a Phyrexian Metamorph to copy my Wormcoil Engine. This means that I'm going to have to Terminus because he's got 6 extra power and we both have a Wormcoil Engine, so that's that. If you're playing hyper defensively, this Lingering Souls actually affords you an opportunity to continue to increase the efficiency of your Terminus. If you simply want to play defensively, playing and flashing back Lingering Souls here allows you to trade 3 tokens for the Wolf, chump the Wormcoil, and use your Wormcoil to eat the other Wolf on his next attack. What this will enable you to do is it'll enable you to both gain 6 life and deal with both of his wolves with this Lingering Souls. This means that you can trade Wormcoil Engines and be left in basically a position where there's an even board, and you can once again go to this idea of trying to attrition him out with this Terminus. Given the number of cards that he has left, this is likely to be very effective. However, I'm here under time control constraints right now. I don't necessarily have the time to be able to execute this line of trading Lingering Souls for the Wolves and then trading Wormcoil Engines and trying to win from there. So, thus, I need to play the Terminus here for time control reasons. I also don't want to attack with the Wormcoil Engine because that gives him 6 life, which will make it that much harder for me to kill him. This demonstrates sort of one of the problems I've been having on Moto recently, is that I can't play, it's hard for me to play fast enough because tapping dual lands requires me to select the mana for each dual lands, and this is causing me to take longer to cast spells than I would anticipate in real life. So while I can play this deck in real life and in general take very long rounds with this deck in real life, it's harder online. So he has a Blade Splicer here, followed by a Huntmaster of the Fells. Essentially, he's assuming that my last card is not a sweeper, and he's trying to kill me quickly. I draw another land, and I am looking to Forbidden Alchemy here for resources. I take the Doomblade because I can put the Lingering Souls in my graveyard and utilize all these resources to trade effectively. So I take a bunch of damage from this attack. And he really has nothing to flip his Ravager of the Fells. Luckily, I draw Day of Judgment, so there is absolutely no reason to spend Lingering Souls and Doomblades when I can just Day of Judgment and wipe everything away. I Lingering Souls here to leave up Doomblade out of the graveyard, so we'll see what he has. He has Blade Splicer, which is not entirely unexpected, and an Oblivion Ring for his Restoration Angel to try to blink his Blade Splicer. Obviously, my response here is going to be to Doomblade the Blade Splicer so he doesn't get more tokens. I draw another land here, and now I play and flashback Lingering Souls. At this point, I'm trying to trade off his existing resources. So what I should have done here is I should have gang blocked his Restoration Angel and not his Golem token. I gang blocked the Golem token because I'm still thinking of Go for the Throat as a potential out to his Restoration Angel when it isn't to the Golem. But however, I have like Sun Titans and extra Lingering Souls in my deck that make me better against the Golem token than the Restoration Angel. So this is once again a time control mistake. At this point in time, with only 44 seconds left on the clock, I know I've lost this game. And so I'm actually going to scoop this turn, but I just want a Forbidden Alchemy to see what my position would be, because I'm curious. So I flash back to Forbidden Alchemy, and here is where I see the Wormcoil Engine. I scoop after this, but the Wormcoil Engine means that I'm actually in a pretty good position. Note that he only has one card left, and barring that card being Phyrexian Metamorph, this Wormcoil Engine is going to be extremely hard for him to deal with. So what's happened here is effectively I was able to utilize my sweepers to good efficiency and to effectively mitigate the effectiveness of his comes into play abilities in cards like Strangleroot Geist that are extremely efficient at attempting to trade 1-for-1. Because I was able to use my sweepers in such an efficient manner, I was able to generate a position where next turn I'm going to have this Wormcoil Engine in play and still be in a solid position. I think that my opponent also played very well against my sweepers. He utilized his resources like Blade Splicer, Huntmaster of the Fells, Restoration Angel, and Acidic Slime effectively in order to mitigate the card effectiveness of my sweepers. What he was doing is utilizing properties of these creatures like Undying, like the fact that they make tokens, like the destruction ability on Acidic Slime, to essentially come out even on cards with me. And because of that, he was able to last as long as he did. I do think that if this game played out, I have a good chance of winning this game because this Wormcoil Engine is likely going to go unanswered, and that's a big problem for him. But I also think that my opponent's position isn't terrible and is definitely not unwinnable. So I wanted to take this as a look of how you play against sweepers and how you utilize sweepers. The key thing to remember with sweepers, once again, is the fact that you're fighting this war of attrition and how you best fight that war. The war is effectively fought on two fronts. The first front is the idea that the control player is going to attempt to play his other non-sweeper resources. In this game, it was things like Gideon Jura, Lingering Souls, and Wormcoil Engine, to try to get his opponent to commit more resources to the table. The idea is that any sort of overcommitment of cards is going to be punished very, very hard by the sweeper. as the opposing player, as the player playing against the sweeper, what you really should be trying to do is trying to mitigate the amount of resources you're committing. There are a number of ways to do this. The first is through efficient creatures that generate lots of power for their mana cost. Blade Splicer, Huntmaster of the Fells are good examples of this. The second is through creatures that are resilient to sweepers, like Strangleroot Geist. And the third is to generate some sort of value out of your creature, so that even if it's swept away, it's not a big deal. Borderland Ranger and Acidic Slime are great examples of this. So, as you can see, my opponent was able to use all his tools, all the tools at his disposal, to generate a position where he's, in fact, was able to fight his way through all of my sweepers and put himself in a winnable position. I do think I'm advantaged, but once again, my advantage relies completely on this Wormcoil engine, and if that goes down to an O-Ring, to a Phyrexian Metamorph effectively would negate the Wormcoil, then I'm in trouble. So anyway, I hope that this was a good demonstration of how sweepers operate and the dynamic that sweepers generate in games of Magic. So I'll see you guys next week. It may be a match review of something that happened at the Invitational, or it may be just another video like this. Hopefully you guys are enjoying this sort of content, and that's it. Goodbye.